the video, or thank you. Please turn off your video if you don't want to appear in any of our social media or post-event materials. And we will be covering the event on Twitter, so please take a look at the thread on our SHAAP account, which is SHAAP Alcohol on Twitter, or use the hashtag ALCOC23. It's catchy. Hashtag ALCOCC23, and I think somebody will put that in the chat for us. During the webinar, everyone will be muted. We're quite flexible about questions. If you think of something as we're going along, please put it in the chat, or we can raise hands later on and take your questions there. But please do enter into the conversation. We always really want to hear what people have to say, and I know our speaker will be interested in that today too. So turning to today's speaker, Dr. Amanda Atkinson. Welcome, Amanda. Amanda's a reader in the Sociology of Public Health in the Public Health Institute at Liverpool John Moores University. She's got a really fantastic and fascinating research portfolio. Most of her research focuses on drinking cultures, particularly gender drinking cultures, substance use, commercial determinants, and the influence of media and alcohol marketing depictions on identity making. She uses both qualitative and quantitative methods, as well as creative and artistic research dissemination. And what Amanda is talking about today, her title is Gendered Alcohol Brand Marketing in a Changing World, Exploring the Targeting and Representation of Women and the Implications, which fits our title, our theme around alcohol in a changing world beautifully. So Dr. Amanda Atkinson is going to present findings of a mixed method ESRC study that explored how women are targeted and represented by alcohol brands, how this has changed over time, and how such marketing is experienced, viewed, and interpreted by consumers. It will also draw on interviews with alcohol marketers to reflect on how women are targeted and represented, and again, how this has changed over time. And Amanda's going to talk for around 50 minutes, so we've got some good time for questions, and I'm delighted now to hand over to you, Amanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol. I'll just begin. Hopefully this will work. Can you see my slides?
Not yet.
Oh.
I'm sure that sometimes they just take a minute. It all goes smoothly when we practice. Oh, here they are. That's them now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'll just have to move a few icons so I can see things there. That should be okay. Great, thanks for that, Carol. Really appreciate the introduction, and thanks to SHAAP for the opportunity to present the research today. I really enjoy this seminar series and SHAAP seminar series generally, so it's really nice to be able to contribute from this end. So as Carol said, the work that I'll be presenting today was funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, and it focused on gendered alcohol brands as well as venue marketing, so nightlife venues, but today I'll be talking specifically about the brand marketing. And it was focusing on how women are targeted and represented, so not just how women are encouraged to consume products, but how they are presented within marketing, also to target the male audience as well. And it fits really nice, as Carol said, with this seminar series of exploring alcohol in a changing world. Oh, sorry. There we go. Fingers crossed that won't happen again. So the official title was a qualitative study exploring nature, influence, creation, as well as regulation of gendered and sexualized brands and venue marketing. As I say, I'll focus predominantly on the brand marketing today, but more than happy to discuss the venue side of things in the discussion. And I'm more than happy to be contacted about that and anything else as well. But the context in which this was studied is what is debatably a contemporary feminist movement and a general increased awareness of social justice issues and activism in society generally, within the media and within youth culture. When I was conducting research probably 7 or 8 years ago, very similar research, we didn't have the same climate in which feminism is now a label and an identity that particularly young women are endorsing. whereas in the past they were, trying to disassociate themselves with feminism. And we now have very much a market-based feminism where a whole range of brands are endorsing gender equality messages to sell products. So we were studying how brands present and target women within that context, and to consider whether anything has changed. Just to declare quickly, no conflicts of interest, and as I say, this was funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. So it was a postdoctorate fellowship for myself as PI and the main researcher, but just also to acknowledge that this was a team effort. So a big shout out today to Beth Meadows, who was the research assistant, and Harry Sumnall, who advised, and we had a really great advisory group as well, including Carol on the advisory group, and a number of student placements as well who helped us in terms of data sorting and cleaning. So thank you very much to everyone who contributed. But I'm going to start with a bit of background to the study, really. So, why is gender important to the study of drinking and drinking culture? And it's a really obvious statement, but gender does matter. I think in the UK, at least from a policy perspective, we're still quite gender blind, but drinking practices are highly gendered. There's certain gender expectations around drinking, what people drink, how they drink, what behaviours they engage in when they drink are highly gendered, and people are judged differently depending on that. And people can transgress and conform to these expectations within their own identity making, so their gender identity making. And the term is, the performance or doing of gender. Drinking allows people to express their gender, but it also then creates gender by reinforcing those expectations. And that relates not only to masculinities, but femininities as well. And that's really important because in the last few decades, we've had a narrowing of the gender gap in drinking and related harms. There's a number of reasons for that. Predominantly the positive social changing social positions of women. So as generally women have more entered education and work, they have more economic independence. That means we have more purchasing power. So then we're, targeted by a whole range of consumer items, including alcohol brands. And just to acknowledge there that, women don't all have the same access and economic independence to buy into these consumer items, but generally speaking, women are more economically independent. Related to that, we've also had a feminisation of the nighttime environment. So gone are the days where, women were restricted to a separate room within the traditional male pub. Women are included in nightlife spaces, and nightlife spaces design themselves and market themselves in ways that in theory should be, appealing and inclusive of women within them. So alongside the increased availability and affordability of alcohol marketing, that means that women are drinking more. So they're experiencing, the pleasures and the opportunities that drinking and drinking culture provides for identity making, for friendships, etc. And it's very important that we acknowledge the pleasure that goes alongside that. But also it means that they're, taking on specific harms, so gender-specific harms, such as, risk of breast cancer, and a whole range of harms that were once more, experienced by men and dominated by men. Although we're drinking more as women, I think it's fair to say that we, still receive a number of mixed messages around our drinking. So we're encouraged to drink, through social norms and commercial messages from brands, venues, etc., that associate drinking with femininity and female empowerment. But at the same time, we're also judged for transgressing gender through our drinking. So the expectations of gender that mean women are more domesticated, controlled, etc. So women get judged a lot more than men for public displays of intoxication. We're still expected to be more controlled and respectable in relation to our drinking. Alongside that, we're told to be responsible for our own drinking by industry and to some extent policy, including our own safety within nightlife environments. So a lot of the history of safety campaigns around sexual assault, etc., very much focused on the woman and the woman's drinking as opposed to the wider factors that lead to perpetration. Alongside that, we're also told by, you know, a number of messages from public health around the harms of alcohol, whether that's gender specific, such as breast cancer, or not. And those public health messages are important, but they're certainly drowned by commercial messages. And unlike commercial messages, they do sometimes tend to fail to acknowledge the pleasures and the empowerment opportunities that women feel that they might get through drinking experiences. And I think sometimes that's one of the reasons why women might dismiss health-related messages that don't acknowledge the pleasures of drinking as well. Because generally, you know, we know that marketing does have influence. It's linked to alcohol initiation, levels of drinking, and alcohol related harms. And the majority, or a vast majority, of alcohol marketing is gendered in some way. So different genders are targeted in different ways, and sexuality and gender stereotypes are used to promote products. The contexts in which people drink are also highly gendered, whether it's a woman drinking at the end of a hard day at work, or a mother, a mum drinking after a stressful day with the kids within the home. Contexts of drinking are highly gendered, particularly nighttime environments where gender and sexual relations are really played out. And if we look at some of the images at the top there, gender becomes very exaggerated. It's where it's performed, people dress up and perform gender and in more kind of obvious ways in live contexts. And these are where brands are promoted and also consumed. In theory, we all have equal access to drinking and drinking spaces, but we know that gender and sexual inequalities exist in drinking spaces. And although I won't be discussing the findings of the venue marketing analysis today, we explored how venue marketing feeds into some of these sexual and gender inequalities, including the normalisation of unwanted sexual attention. But related to this presentation today around brands, there's increased awareness from women and discussion around gender inequalities, including those linked to drinking and the nighttime environment, including sexual violence, which reflects this wider context of contemporary feminism and feminist identities that young women are associating themselves with. And again, you know, we were interested in looking at how brands of marketing has changed and how women interpret brand marketing related to this change in social context. Just a very quick slide on policy. So I'm sure most of you are aware, but in the UK, we have self-regulation in terms of alcohol marketing. There's a long list of codes that suggests and gives advice on what brands should not do. And there's long-standing codes around, for example, not associating alcohol with sexual success, things like that. But around probably 5 years ago now, the Advertising Standards Association introduced a whole range of new codes related to gender, not just for alcohol marketing, but marketing generally. And that included not causing offence on the grounds of gender, sexuality, a whole range of other factors, not using gender stereotypes if they're harmful, and not using sexualized imagery if it's irrelevant to the product. We've also had change where we have, you know, big corporations like Diageo doing training around gender stereotyping. Camera, the campaign for Real Ale, also banned sexist beer pumps around 6-7 years ago now. So there has been change that is part of, but also reflects this wider social context in which gender equality is much more within the public consciousness. So against that context, we had a number of research questions and objectives. So we were interested in how brands and venues, but again, today I'll just focus on the brands, how women were being targeted and represented, how femininities and sexualities were constructed to promote alcohol use, and how gender stereotypes were reproduced and also challenged, including sexualization and objectification. And again, within this wider context of increased visibility of feminism and gender equality, social justice generally, and within society. And we were interested in the influence of this on gender and sexual identity making, because we know that alcohol use and practice is important to that. So therefore, the process of influence is through identity making, in which people's drinking practices are influenced, and generally just people's interpretations, perspectives on this, how it relates to their own experiences, including the pleasures and also the harms. And again, I won't be discussing the venues, but in relation to venue marketing, we were interested in how marketing reinforces some of the inequalities that exist in nightlife. In terms of methodology, so we had to begin by looking at, well, how are brands representing and targeting women? So we conducted a very large analysis relative to what others and myself have conducted in the past, looking at the marketing of 20 alcohol brands on social media, looking at over 2,500 posts. And also alongside that, this was 18 months, and a bit of off on a tangent here, but that included the first UK lockdown, COVID lockdown. So we've wrote a paper looking specifically on how brands adapted their marketing during that period. Again, I'm happy to discuss that in the questions, and happy to pass on any of these publications if you'd like to get in contact. We also looked at marketing in women's magazines. You know, a lot of marketing is now online, but traditional forms of marketing targeting women tend to be within those traditional sources, such as magazines. And we also looked at complaints to the ASA and the Portman Group for breaches of the code in relation to gender and sexuality. We then wanted to speak to consumers, and we wanted this to be a really diverse and intersectional sample. So in the main, we spoke to women, but we did speak to some men around how women's sexualities were used to target them. But we predominantly discussed and chatted to women, and you know, we had a big representation from the LGBTQ plus population, a high percentage of people of colour, and we wanted to make sure that we had a diverse range of experiences, including from non-drinkers or people in recovery, as well as a range of women that identified as feminist and those that didn't, because we thought that given this wider context, women might have different views and experiences of marketing depending on how they relate and their relationship with feminism generally. So sorry, I've got my dog here today. I didn't think that was going to happen. I'm so sorry. We also did a range of artistic workshops, so using my own experience in the past, using creative methods and my kind of experience in my hobby as an artist. We engaged with participants and produced a number of artworks to try to disseminate the research findings in a more creative way, a more interesting way to a public audience as well. And I'll draw on some of these as I go along, but I'm more than happy to discuss this element of the work in the questions as well. We then wanted to speak to people, well, those, you know, actually working within marketing of brands and venues. And again, today I'll just focus on the brands. And this was a very kind of risky element of the work. We weren't sure whether people working within brand marketing would want to speak to someone working within academia and someone who's aligned with public health. But we managed to speak to 23 brand marketers. I think perhaps the people that we spoke to might be a different group of people to the ones that declined the invite. So I'm not saying that the views of industry here are representative in any way, but we were very pleased that the industry were willing to engage. And it wasn't the case that we were consulting with them. We wanted to discuss gendered marketing and regulation with them and look at their narrative from a critical perspective to see what they had to say and how that compared to the views of consumers. In relation to the venue side, we spoke to venues and we spoke to a number of people within brand and venue regulation, and also women from a venue perspective working within sexualized marketing. But again, today I'll focus on brands. So to move on to the findings about how women and femininity is used in alcohol brand marketing and consumer perspectives, I'll draw on a number of general themes and case studies and discuss how women felt about this and how it was appealing, how it wasn't, and how it related to their own experiences. But generally speaking, we're still working on this, but marketing had appeal and was relatable in a number of ways. Firstly, by being related to values and lifestyles associated with a number of femininities. First of all, very and more kind of traditional girly femininities. feminist identities, empowered identities but not feminist, and queer identities as well. They also had appeal by perpetuating but also challenging gender stereotypes, and by associating themselves with social issues related to those identities that I've previously mentioned. So social cause marketing, where brands align themselves with social causes such as gender inequality and present themselves as kind of doing good. And all this kind of worked together to reinforce gendered and positive social norms around alcohol use, which could lead to first-time purchases, brand switching, retaining customers through brand loyalty, and brand avoidance as well. Although there was evidence of brand avoidance, it was more that people would switch. You know, we obviously spoke to people that didn't drink, that had views, but generally brand marketing meant that some people would either buy products or distance themselves and avoid them, and therefore drink something else depending on how they were presenting themselves. We found that generally critical thinking around alcohol and marketing and gendered messaging particularly was protective in relation to what people consumed, and people would you know, either resist or contest gender stereotypes and therefore resist and oppose certain brands. There was a small group of individuals that were purchasing products based on moral and ethical consumption, and they were interested in whether brands marketing around social causes was actually aligned with their in-house culture, and they wanted to know whether the brands come across as authentic, and they would make decisions around what to buy based on their moral and ethical identities. The extent to which people were aware and you know, considered alcohol as no ordinary commodity, so a commodity that can do harm, influence their viewpoints as well, and the degree to which people had alcohol-related harms, experienced alcohol-related harms, and very much influenced how critical they were of marketing. So we spoke to a group of women who had previous problematic use, and they were very aware and very critical and had considered marketing in a much more in-depth way than women who didn't have alcohol problems. The first kind of case study that I'll discuss is a really obvious one, but the pinking of products. And we wanted to discuss with women, is pink just a colour? What does pink marketing mean to you? And, you know, is it the case that women just like the drinks pinked and they're happy to go along with this? Or, you know, is the you know, transgression and resistance to this? Because we know that, you know, the pink phenomena has always existed, but it's really intensified in recent years. The kind of gin phase has really intensified the pinking of products and venues, as well, as you can see from the images. Very much a feminine aesthetic. And even though generally alcohol marketing is global, increasingly it's always also local. So most cities will have a gin collection, including a pink gin. In Liverpool here, one of those is the Scouse Bird pink gin, which is trying to reclaim the negative stereotype of the Scouse woman to promote itself. We also have kind of branch marketing through the colour pink, where alcohol products go out and infiltrate other consumer markets through this pinking. So pink Prosecco oats has been one that's been discussed a lot on academic Twitter and lately. But generally we were quite overwhelmed by not just the pinking of liquids and products, but the whole aesthetic of a social media post. And when it was deliberately targeting women, was very pink, it was glittery, there was flowers, etc. And we were interested in thinking, you know, how do women actually relate to this? So we had a number of different perspectives on this. And first of all, there was a group of women that unapologetically consumed these products because it formed part of the way in which they performed a really kind of traditional girly femininity. And it allowed them to express that on social media by uploading images. And that also related to the consumption of no and low alcohol products. So some women that didn't drink but drank these products still wanted a really girly, pretty drink to upload on social media. And it allowed them to kind of feel included within that female friendship night out. So we have the quote there from Emma saying she's quite girly, she'd defo be buying pink, it's quite appealing, it's girly, it's a nice bottle. There's lots of discussion of things being pretty and nice. As Zoe says there, she loves pink gin. She always buys the prettiest but also the cheapest bottle. And for her, it was part of that really girly getting ready process for a night out, and having a really nice girly drink while she's putting her makeup on and getting ready really added to that kind of sense of pleasure for her. Within this group of women that defined themselves as really girly, they found this kind of marketing relatable, but a lot of them almost felt embarrassed by the fact that they were kind of conforming to that traditional girly stereotype. And they talked about how they'd been suckered into, or they'd fell victim and had fell for this type of marketing. So even though that it really aligned with their identities, they were aware that that was quite stereotypical, and almost when talking to us wanted to express that they kind of knew that they were being traditionally kind of stereotypical within their drinking practice. Being really girly didn't mean that you would automatically consume these products. So women who were, you know, really girly spoke about how that was one aspect of who they were as women, but not every aspect. And the way that alcohol brands really overuse pink really annoyed them. As Tasha says there, it really pisses me off, because she really liked that sparkly pink element of her identity, but she felt that the overuse of pink infantilized women and reduced everything that women do to being silly and just what girls do. So she enjoyed that bit of her, but she resisted buying into this type of, you know, really girly marketing, because it annoyed her, because it was overused. And it was almost kind of tacky by completely, you know, reducing women to everything pink and glittery. It felt that there was a certain element of tackiness to that. And the quote from Ella there shows as well that this was another girl, that a woman that was very, very girly, loved pink, but she just said she's not falling for it. She's not going to buy something just because it's pink. It's obviously targeting her, and she resisted. So being girly and having that identity didn't automatically mean that women would buy these products. There was a lot of resistance as well. There was then a group of women who just absolutely hated this type of marketing. And it was almost the case where the pinking of products deterred them from buying these drinks. It was almost kind of protective from them buying these products. They felt it was a negative gender stereotype, and they wanted to disassociate themselves from that identity of girliness, because they almost felt that it was anti-feminist. For them, traditional femininity and girliness contradicted a feminist identity. They didn't want their drinks to be pinked, and it prevented consumption. And a lot of these women transgressed expectations and would consume beer and pints and things like that. So as Alex says there, it's condescending, it puts her off. Elaine saying it's very limiting. And Sam there saying that, you know, she likes pink gin, she likes the taste, but she doesn't want the stereotypes within her identity that's associated with pink gin drinking, so they avoided them. And then interestingly, there's this last group of women that we thought some women would like it, some wouldn't, but this was a really interesting group of women that tended to be younger feminist women who discuss this kind of tension point between all things girly and traditional and a feminist identity. And they negotiated that and almost wanted to make pink compatible with their feminism. And they talked about how they might, as Rebecca says, they'd be reclaiming pink. Pink is something that should be celebrated rather than something you distance yourself from, because it's celebrating femininity, and that should be a positive thing. They also talked about how their relationship to pink generally, not just in relation to alcohol, but their general perception and relationship with the colour pink as a symbol of femininity had changed over time, and they'd really resisted it when they were younger. But getting older and becoming almost more feminist, they thought, well, why shouldn't I like pink? It's something that's feminine, and that's not negative. Therefore, they would consume these products. And Molly there, the quotes, there's a lot to unpick here. We could spend a whole session on this, but she talks about how when she was younger, she rejected pink because she didn't want to be like all the other girls, because she was trying to attract and appeal to men. But now she doesn't care what men thinks of her, so she likes pink. So it's so much to unpick there around gender and sexual relations in terms of, you know, just a pink product. There was so much going on there. And within this group of women, the last way in which they negotiated pink and feminism was they tried to kind of degender the colour and the products by saying, you know, it's just a colour. We socially construct the concept that pink is feminine. Let's try and resist that. It's just a colour. So I'll drink it because I'm not drinking it because I'm a woman. I just like the colour. But overall, our conclusion would be that that pink isn't just a colour. The fact that women were really negotiating it and talking in depth about what it symbolised shows that there's a lot of identity work at play. There's a lot of symbolic meaning attached to these drinks. And these drinks have appeal beyond that traditional girly femininity. And there's almost, by some women, a feminist connotation being attached to it as well. When we spoke to marketers about this, well, you know, they discussed how it's a really obvious way to target women. Most of them were quite critical of it themselves and were trying to move away from it, but quite a few of them kind of had never questioned that women wouldn't like pink. They just thought it was an obvious way to target women. And this quote here, which I won't read out, and I think my slides will be available, but this really highlights the role of supermarkets in terms of gendered marketing. And this is a really a prominent, one of the prominent female targeted brands, and they were approached by a supermarket to create a product to try and get women close to the beer fixture in the aisle. And they didn't want a beer, but they wanted something cidery and fruity. And they approached them and they designed something. The label was purple, and the supermarket came back to them and basically said, no, we want it pink. And they redesigned it and they said, no, we want it pinker. We want the liquid pinker, because they wanted to encourage women to pour it over, you know, ice cubes and upload it to Instagram. And so this marketer was kind of a bit, you know, oh great, I had to go along with the pink marketing, but we designed it purple because the supermarket demanded it. That Instagrammability is really important. You know, brands are, very aware that this is part of women's identity performance online. And we also spoke to women that work within very kind of traditionally feminine products, and they spoke about how they would deliberately collaborate with influencers online that were very girly, very pink, to try and associate their products with that very girly and femininity. We also had a lot of conversation around how pink was something that they were trying to disassociate their brands from, particularly the brands that were a little bit more expensive. They wanted to disassociate themselves from cheaper brands because pink was regarded as being tacky. So kind of hot pink, bright pink was discussed as being a bit cheap and tacky. So they preferred more natural and more neutral, gender neutral and pink, baby pink, etc. Lighter shades, because they didn't want to be perceived as being kind of tacky and a bit overly feminine. But generally speaking, a lot of the marketers felt that this was really lazy marketing. It was outdated. They tried to move away from it, but sometimes clients wanted it. But at the same time, they acknowledge that it's safe. So this quote here kind of says, you know, we need to be moving away from these gender stereotypes, but the beverage industry is quite safe, and it's quite rare that someone steps outside the comfort zone. So a lot of them were very critical that, you know, pink's such an obvious, really easy way to target women. But sometimes, you know, it's what's easy, and sometimes that's what clients expect as well. The next main theme and case study is again a really obvious one, but the role of female friendship and bonding. And this was something that we didn't find in posts and content targeting men. We had the usual kind of beer with football, but we didn't have the same emphasis on single sex and friendship as we did with female targeted marketing. So every context of female interaction was associated with drinking, nights in, nights out, pre-drinking, getting ready, a walk in the park, a picnic. It all came down to bonding through alcohol consumption, almost in a way that was trying to kind of sell sisterhood and female friendship as a source of empowerment. This also overlapped with interactive marketing. So a lot of interactive marketing for women relative to men, you know, trying to get women to tag their friends, share amongst their friends to win competition prizes and events that they could, you know, participate in and alongside their female friends. When we talked to women about this was the form of marketing that they were least critical of, and it was very, very relatable, because alcohol to them was, you know, drinking with female friends was part of memory making and bonding. As Emma says there, people tend to open up a bit more. You have a laugh and like make memories when you consume alcohol. And it was part of collective feminine identity making. As Anne-Marie says there, female friendships, it's a big part of what it means to be a woman. And by brands using this type of marketing, it really kind of fed into that really big importance that women place on female only friendships, because for a lot of women, they value time just with women. Pre-drinking, even nights out, most of them didn't go out to find a sexual partner, whether that was male, female, or another gender. They went out and they didn't want to be interactive. They didn't want interaction with men. It was all about female friendship, and this marketing really fed into that importance. At the same time, women discussed how this focus on female friendship was very exclusionary, particularly to women that didn't drink or didn't drink that much. And as Claire says there, it added pressure and stress on girls that aren't into drinking. And this was really prominent amongst women who had previous problematic use. And they discussed how, and we have a paper on this, which I'm happy to share. They discussed how friendship-based marketing had prolonged their problematic drinking because they were fearful that if they stopped drinking, they'd feel excluded and they'd lose friends. So as Catherine says there, this type of marketing, made her feel that her friends would be annoyed at her because she would no longer be having those crazy nights out, chatting rubbish in the toilets and having all these heart-to-hearts. And these women genuinely felt that exposure and interaction with this marketing reinforced the social norm that to be a good friend and to be social and to be a woman, because female friendship is so important to your sense of self as a woman, that they had to drink, and they felt that prolonged their problematic use. And we spoke to marketers about this. Well, this was just kind of almost the 101 of marketing, because marketing is about providing opportunities to drink and occasions and suggesting contexts in which people might drink. And those have to be positive associations, and it's about, creating memories. But they generally felt that they were just reflecting real life, which, a lot of work that I've done with media creators and marketers, they say that they're not feeding into norms, they're just reflecting culture. It's a very common narratives. There was this kind of conversation by some that this was related to the regulatory codes as well, because to depict someone drinking alone or an alone drinking suggests problematic drinking, and therefore social drinking was not only positive, but it was, something that they thought was more responsible compared to showing someone drinking by themselves. We spoke to a number of influencers, and they spoke about, and particularly the one that I present there at the top, saying that increasingly when she's collaborating with brands and venues, and they're asking her to try and encourage a feeling of missing out. So the woman there has a big, large female following, and there was a bit of a tension point for her. She wanted to collaborate with these brands, but she kind of said, it's not really fair. I'm being told to try and make women consume and buy into these products by making them feel like they're missing out by uploading images of my friends, etc. She still collaborated, but she felt a bit uneasy about this new trend of asking her to do so. But generally friendship, female friendship, as the quote shows there at the bottom, it was just a kind of industry truth. It's always been there. Social drinking and friendship was seen as reflecting real life. The next kind of big theme and case study is the way in which a very kind of traditional appearance and consumer-based femininity was promoted by female targeted brands. So very stereotypical, focusing on high heels, handbags, clothes, makeup, almost in ways that suggested this was empowering. So the Eco Falls example there, anything is possible, with a little lipstick and Prosecco. We found that generally over time, the beauty and the feminine beauty connotations were more diverse. So, increasingly over time, more women of colour being promoted within a beauty context as well. But brands were also collaborating with a number of appearance-based consumer items, whether it be fake tan and makeup organisations and companies. And this therefore fed into that whole interactive element where women were being asked to share and comment and tag friends to win competition prizes. And I think the example there at the bottom really kind of sums up this theme, collagen pink gin. It just kind of combines a lot of the themes. So, that idea of beauty, beauty, performance, perfecting appearance, and the normalization of that for women. When we spoke to women about this, again, very, very relatable. And for a vast majority, particularly those that were more traditionally girly, it was relatable and appealing because it just reflected the importance of that night out for them. That getting ready context with female friends, perfecting appearance, where someone might do makeup, someone might do hair, etc. That was almost the best bit of a night out for some women, and it was regarded as empowering. As the quotes he showed, they wanted to feel nice, feel good by having their makeup and their outfits doing. And what these brands were doing by depicting that context was associating alcohol with this concept of perfecting appearance for a night out drinking. There was also criticism, particularly for women that didn't kind of conform to these traditional concepts of beauty. You know, they felt that it was very stereotypical. They were just targeting the generic woman. It was outdated, and it was reducing women's worth to appearance. They also felt that it was exclusionary in that it was very heteronormative, very traditional, and it excludes other femininities, including queer femininities as well. But a lot of criticism that, you know, this is just another way in which women are being reduced to appearance, and a lot of women would eye roll, and, you know, this just wasn't relatable to a big group of women as well. And this is an art piece that I'm happy to talk about later. It depicts obviously alcohol, the pinking, and all the kind of consumer items that brands and venues were presenting as being almost compulsory for a night out drinking, including the fake tan, the eyelashes, the high heel, and the camera phone for selfie culture. So that was made based on women's discussions around nights out and this kind of girly femininity. This overlapped with, this extension of appearance overlapped with calorie labeling and calorie marketing. So a lot of brands, even though the health advice, health lobby are promoting calorie labeling to give women, and not just women, but consumers generally, information to make informed decisions. But a lot of brands are already doing this, but as a marketing strategy, particularly to target women. At the same time, we had the opposite of this, where there was an anti-diet discourse at play. Some examples there, but an example would be Bailey's, that are kind of increasingly encouraging indulgence, and you know, they've reappropriated their brand as an ingredient to quite calorific and desserts, cakes, etc. And we were interested in what women thought about this. And generally, you know, whatever the identity of the woman and the femininity is, they really hated calorie marketing. And that actually transcended and crossed over with calorie labeling. So this has really big policy implications. As Gemma says there, it just really annoys her. It's trying to make us feel insecure to make money. As Fiona says as well, they're selling you the problem and the solution in one. There's an issue of weight and body confidence, but here drink this low calorie product. And not only did they feel that it impacted on body positivity, but they felt that therefore it impacted on pleasure, because when they went out, it was time out from worrying about those things, and they didn't want to know the calorie content. They talked about how it would make them feel guilty, and they didn't want to see it. It was also not relatable to younger women. They felt that calories was very much linked with kind of Weight Watchers and Slimming World culture. And as Danielle says there, it just screams mum vibes. They didn't think that it was for their generation. So when we talked about calorie marketing and labeling, there just wasn't much resonance there for a lot of women. And, you know, again, I think this has policy implications. When we spoke to marketers, most of them, actually all of them, were quite happy to have calorie labeling on their products. They framed it as industry best practice, and a lot of them were doing that already, because the public health message of informed choices aligns with their ideology of individual responsibility and consumer responsibility. So this was, they talked about it being very big, as the quote from in the top left there says, you know, but they're trying to associate their products and target the Slimming World and Weight Watchers kind of generation, as the women discussed previously. Lots of them spoke about how this isn't necessarily gendered anymore. They were aware that increasingly men are very health, but particularly appearance focused because of social media culture. And they discussed again how their marketing just reflected society and a large scale, a societal trend around appearance and health rather than trying to influence. Some of them spoke quite openly. So this female at the bottom there spoke about how she did think that in some contexts, when calories is used as a marketing strategy, that it's problematic because there's this kind of halo health effect. If you're saying that a product is low calorie, it gives the impression that it's healthier when, you know, it's actually not the case because alcohol isn't a healthy commodity. But at the same time, they chose to label, they weren't using it as a marketing strategy, but they chose to put the label on there because it was Portman Group best practice and they wanted to give their consumers informed choices. So there was a lot of agreement. They were happy to calorie label their products, but they didn't feel that it would affect their bottom line. It might mean that people would switch from one product to the next, but they didn't see calorie labeling as impacting on their profits. The next main kind of theme and case study is this idea that alcohol was represented and depicted as a way for women to manage their day-to-day stressful lives and the multiple roles that women take on, particularly in contemporary society where we have more gender equality. So alcohol was presented as a way, as a reward for managing and dealing with the stress of being a mother, of being, you know, a friend, having a job, juggling all those things. This concept of me time, wine o'clock was very relatable to women. This overlap with motherhood marketing as a way to celebrate motherhood, but a way to escape that traditional concept of motherhood as well. Me time at the end of the day when the kids have gone to bed. When we discuss this with women, very, very relatable to those with and without mothers. So as Liz says there, it's 5 o'clock somewhere after a tough day at work, she's stressed, a nice glass of wine, it's peace and quiet, it's time for her. So that concept that, you know, we can now have it all, but life's stressful, we have all these roles, and alcohol is something for women that can alleviate and can deal with that stress. It was time out, about reclaiming that independent identity, particularly for mothers. So Amy there saying when he's not there, when the baby's not there, it's time for her. And that's when she'd have a glass of wine. And some mums spoke about how in the past they never used to drink wine, they drank other drinks, but now they've become a mum, they'd realised that actually I'm drinking a lot more wine. That, you know, so that there was this concept that wine in particular was part of this kind of, you know, mummy wine culture. That's what mums do. And women who were yet to have children just assumed that when they became mothers that they would drink wine and drink more. So as Emma says there, if I had kids, I'd be drinking a glass of wine every night. So there was this notion that it's stressful and alcohol's a way to deal with that. At the same time, there was lots of criticism of this marketing, even amongst women that felt that they were influenced by it, and the women that felt that it reflected their drinking practices, because they felt that, you know, it's problematic to present alcohol as a way to deal with stress, given the relationship and the relationship between alcohol and mental health issues. And they spoke a lot about a mummy wine culture, particularly women that were now sober due to previous problematic use. They felt that they'd really kind of been part of a mummy wine culture that had normalized their problematic use, because, you know, not just brands but influencers and motherhood influencers online that present alcohol use as a way of dealing with the stress of motherhood. They also had wider criticisms that indirectly this marketing, because we found with male targeted marketing, we might have Father's Day posts, but we didn't have the same connotations and the same marketing around the stresses of fatherhood. It was just mothers, and they generally felt that that was problematic because it's reinforcing this idea that women should be the main carer. And presenting alcohol use as a way to alleviate stress of motherhood, the stresses of motherhood, they felt that it doesn't solve the problem. The problem is that they wanted more help and they wanted more affordable childcare, and generally a societal shift that realises that women are under a lot of strain. So a lot of criticism, again, particularly by women who were feminists and were discussing these kind of wider gender inequalities and structures. When we spoke to marketers, some of them that had done a lot of this in the past, spoke about how it was a way of linking alcohol use to connotations of relaxation, and it was a relatable hook to target women. But generally they were very critical of this, and the majority of them had deliberately moved away from it. There was one creative industry and creative agency that said when they give pictures and talks, they even have meme and motherhood related posts as examples of something that they wouldn't do, because not only did they generally discuss that it's a bit tacky, it's overdone, and they didn't want their brands to be perceived in that way, but they did think that this was really problematic in relation to that stress link and the impact on mental health. And some of them were very felt that how the Portman Group and ASA codes relate to this type of marketing was very vague, because it's not explicitly linking alcohol use to stress relief, but indirectly the connotations are there, and they felt that it was a grey area, and therefore they wanted to avoid it. We asked the question as to whether does sex still sell, and these are images from previous work that I've done from ale and craft beer brands, very sexualized and very problematic in a number of ways. And we were interested in what women felt about this and what industry had to say about a general potential move away from sexualization and objectification. And that was very much the case. So in our marketing analysis and conversations with industry, there'd been a move away from this. And industry spoke about how it was a positive change because they had an ethical and social responsibility to do good and to not represent and depict women in problematic ways, because they were aware that their marketing had wider influence on social norms, including how women are perceived and connotations of sexual availability, etc. They spoke about how they had moved away from this, but they couldn't really recall a meeting where they'd sat around a table and said, we need to stop doing this. It was kind of a gradual shift and kind of awakening that this was just no longer acceptable. And some male interviewees spoke about how over time, there's more female representation within the industry, and they began to learn from female marketers that this type of marketing was no longer acceptable. And also, as summed up by this consumer, no longer relatable, not just to men, but how it was alienating a group of female consumers, 52% of the population essentially, and particularly if industry wants to get more women into kind of the beer market as well, it was no longer relatable. And as Mel says, they've realised that they can appeal to men and women and make money. They don't just have to appeal to men. What's almost took its place is this, what we might refer to as social cause marketing, where some brands endorse feminism without using the word feminism and endorse gender equality within their marketing. So examples would be collaborations and promoting International Women's Day. So Diageo is one of the main sponsors of that. Connotations of girl power, girl gangs, gender representation, and even brands promoting concepts of sexual consent, and some brands collaborating with feminist activist groups, as well as iconography of feminism and transgression as a form of empowerment. So encouraging women to drink traditionally male drinks. Women can drink what men drink. Women engaging in brewing. Women engaging in traditional male activities such as certain sports. Now, we were interested in how women felt about this, and whether that there was differences. And there was a first group of women that did like this type of marketing. Oh, sorry, industry perspectives first. So when we spoke to industry about this, they again linked to the move away from sexualization and objectification. They felt that it was a way for them to do the right thing. They had a platform. They could encourage positive social change by being more diverse and promoting gender equality messages. And as the female marketer says there, increasingly consumers are purchasing products based on their ethics and morals. So you have to be being seen to do the right thing. So there's obviously economic benefits to this type of marketing as well. In terms of consumer perspectives, there was different groups of women. So there was this first group of women that really liked this type of marketing. They talked about how it was better than the stereotypes and better than the sexist content, but they felt that brands were, as brands said themselves, doing the right thing. It was purposeful. So as Nicola says there's a cause compared to when you see like a girl drinking pink gin. There's no depth to that. So they felt that it had more meaning to it, which meant that they had more positive brand and, positive perceptions of the brand. Because of this type of marketing. They're also in favour of how some brands, give donations to charities, whether it be a women's group or an LGBTQ plus organisation, as I'll go on to discuss, even Black Lives Matter related marketing. It was part of ethical consumption. You could consume and also feel that you were contributing by your money going somewhere. And for this group of women, brands generally were compatible with their perception of feminism. They felt that the market and brands, consumerism had a role to play because brands can use their platform to spread a positive message. In contrast, we had this other group of women, feminist women, who just absolutely hated it. For them, brands and the market just is completely incompatible. Feminism and profit making is just incompatible. As Rebecca says there, it's just t-shirt feminism. It's like feminism summed up in one sentence. They felt that it was quite harmful by diluting the message, and as Ruth says there, it's quite damaging. They also picked up on this notion and this finding of ours that brands endorse gender equality, but they never use the word feminist or feminism. So it's kind of feminism in disguise. And brands agreed that feminist and feminism is still quite a tricky word. You can alienate consumers. And as Katie says there, they want the best of both worlds. They want to interest feminists whilst not committing enough to polarize. Because as Charlotte says, a lot of people still dislike feminists. So these women hate this type of marketing and just wouldn't engage with it. There was another group of women linked to the messages of empowerment, this type of marketing, including the friendship marketing and motherhood marketing. And they felt that indirect messages of empowerment linked to drinking was really problematic because for them, drinking had been really disempowering, and it wasn't until they stopped drinking that they felt they gained control and a sense of empowerment. And as the quotes sum up there was, a lot of criticism and disproportionate impact, I think, of this type of marketing on women depending on the relationship with alcohol. And just to very quickly add in these two art pieces that are linked to this type of marketing collaborations. I have consent to show these images, but participants who created a number of artworks trying to counter marketing messages. So first of all, we have the pin badges that's trying to counter this message of to be empowered and to be a good friend and a fun person, and you've got to consume alcohol. And then we had a poem by one of our participants around motherhood marketing and this kind of marketing of empowerment, and how that had really impacted her relationship with alcohol as well.
Amanda, that says over 50 minutes now, so if we can finish up in the next 5 minutes,
yeah,
just so there's time for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I'm almost done, just this last one. So the next big theme was the way that brands are moving away from this gender binary and beyond cis heteronormative identities and femininities that are much broader through association with LGBTQ plus communities, through the commodification of pride, links with LGBTQ plus charities, using drag culture, LGBTQ plus influencers. And when we spoke to consumers about this, very mixed views. So there was a group of particularly LGBTQ plus people who felt that, this was just a form of visibility. It was acceptance and showed that people were accepting identities beyond the gender and sexuality and binary. And there was one person that spoke about how when they were coming out, they walked down the alcohol aisle and there was lots of bottles with flags and it made them feel, really accepted. Some of them spoke about how if donations are being given to charities, and that's a good thing. As Rebecca says, I'm not going to buy a product just because it's endorsed by Stonewall, but if my money is going to the queer people, then she's down for that. But in the main, most people were critical of this. They felt that a lot of brands just slap a rainbow flag on for a month of the year during Pride Month and then move on to the next social cause. They questioned who it was for. Queer people felt that it wasn't for them, but it was for allies and people that wanted to portray themselves as allies, including their mums. There was one group of queer young women that spoke about how this is for my mum because every time she sees something with a rainbow flag on, she buys it and gives it to me, or shows me she's got it because she wants to express that she's accepting of my identity. Generally, it was regarded as rainbow washing, and a lot of people and really rejected this, felt that it was exploiting the community. And a group of people also felt that it was very irresponsible, and there was a contradiction between brands endorsing LGBTQ plus rights and empowerment when their product, alcohol, actually disproportionately affects the community in terms of alcohol related harm. So they felt that the product didn't match the cause. And we made an art piece there, and reappropriating this kind of pride-related marketing, and it represents all the different viewpoints and quotes from participants. When we spoke to marketers, a lot of them said that they agreed that, they said a lot of brands just jumped to one cause to the next, and it was really tricky to get it right because longevity was really important. They called it chameleon branding, where some brands just jump to different causes, and they really didn't want to be one of those brands that were regarded in that way. There was discussions around how it was a way to stay relevant, to be appealing to a younger audience, but it was risky. So this is a quote from a very traditionally male product, and probably middle-aged men consume this product, and they decided to sponsor a trans football team, and they knew it would probably alienate their key audience, but they felt that audience, even though it's the key audience, it's not, they don't really care about that audience anymore because they want to be more relatable to young people, and they felt that they had a responsibility and a platform to showcase different identities. Inclusivity generally was a buzzword. It was used again and again, how we need to be more diverse in the identities and we present because we have a responsibility, but also that some of them are worried about being called out for just being purely white and middle class in their representations. And as a trade organisation representative says there, brands need to be more inclusive. It makes the industry look good. Very quickly touch on this, identity making. Our study was very intersectional. I just kind of want to close on this, that intersectionality is so important. So these are from males and women. One, a young Black feminist female who talk about her and a group of friends who wouldn't drink products that were linked to the slave trade. Because gin was linked traditionally to the slave trade, and they just wouldn't consume these products because it was just really uneasy for them. And a lot of people within the LGBTQ plus community not drinking certain vodka brands that had links with Russia, for example, because of the history of of the ideology of homophobia. And so a lot of identity work at play in terms of what drinks people and brands people would or wouldn't consume. Just to very, very quickly summarise, lots of traditional and progressive gendered messaging at play, and the relatability and appeal of that was really dependent on women's and other people's identities and how they viewed stereotyping and how much they transgressed. There's been positive change and move away from sexualization and objectification. That helped create a positive brand image amongst some consumers. And brands are now promoting gender and sexual equality and diverse identity. So that's almost a positive for gender equality and representation. But from a health perspective, we need to consider, what that means for health. If people are therefore more likely to consume these products due to those messages of empowerment and diversity, is there a contradiction there? Because we know that alcohol contributes to gender and sexual inequalities. Lots of critical thinking though, which is really promising. Lots of critical thinking in relation to gender as well, and a lot of resistance to a lot of this marketing. So women and other genders and consumers didn't just accept this marketing. There was a lot of criticism and a lot of resistance to this marketing as well, including through a kind of anti-capitalist and feminist critique as well. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And what a fantastic study, looking at the brand marketing, looking at women's responses, looking at the marketers and looking at the venues. It's just really, really comprehensive. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes for questions. So if people could ask their questions fairly briefly, that would be fantastic. But I'd like to go over to Peter Rice, first of all, please. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Amanda, that was really interesting. And Simon Capewell commented, getting access to industry people is really so valuable. It's not easy to do, so that was well done. But yeah, I was just really intrigued by the brand avoidance, and so much of the content actually that you described was people saying how they don't like it. And I'm just interested in how the industry balance that up. Do they accept that they're going to turn some people off just as the price to be paid for running a successful campaign? And what are the metrics that they use? Is it really the hard sales data that tells them whether it's been a successful campaign, or is it more kind of attitudinal, qualitative stuff that they use? Did you get any insight into that?
That really varied depending on the size of the brand and the organisation. For example, there was discussion by one male marketer who didn't work for Gordon's, but he spoke about Gordon's Pink Gin as, like, you know, the promoter of pinking, and how lots of brands who couldn't afford to do their own marketing and with consumers, that, you know, Gordon's Gin, Pink Gin, was just you know, a really positive and really successful brand. So brands just copied. There was a lot of copycat marketing that was discussed. But in terms of Gordon's, it's obviously, you know, very gendered, Pink Gin, but they spoke about how, well, actually, when they target, they target everyone, particularly on social media, because with the new guidelines, it costs to target. So what they said was, if they you know, promote this product to a general audience, not only they might target women that it's not relatable to, but that doesn't matter, they won't consume it, but they also pick up consumers that they might not have you know, attracted if they're targeted to a particular group of women. So they spoke how increasingly a lot of men are drinking Pink Gin. It might be in the home, away from, you know, the audience of other men, but they spoke about how actually a product that you could assume is really girly and targeted, within the marketing of that, they're actually targeting, particularly on social media, a general audience. But yeah, lots of discussion around copycat marketing, particularly for the smaller local products as well.
Thank you. Simon Capewell's got a question, please. Simon.
Yeah, so thanks, Amanda. I mean, just so impressive. Huge congratulations to you and the team. Really robust methods, so much data, so rich. And as Peter was saying, the access to the industry folk, accepting that these may be more cooperative end of the spectrum, really rich data. My question was about tobacco. I remember 30 years ago, Amanda Amos and colleagues were looking at similar stories in terms of the tobacco industry targeting women, because in those days, a much lower percentage of women smoked. It was a potential market. So do you think there are parallels with the work done then and now, and have you explored them?
Absolutely. I know Carol speaks on this as well. Carol's probably a bit more, you know, a lot more informed about the tobacco side than me, but there's definitely similarities, absolutely. And interestingly, when we spoke to marketers around regulation, so all of them that chose to speak to us were very passionate about the codes, and they were very passionate about being code compliant, because they were really up for and wanted self-regulation to maintain. But they spoke about how they can see things going the way that the tobacco has gone, and for them that was very worrying, because to them, alcohol wasn't the same as tobacco. Alcohol was different, and they kind of try to differentiate their product from tobacco. But in terms of you know, the empowerment messages, very similar things there. You know, a lot to be said about kind of health messaging on alcohol products as well. So lots of similarities. We've not looked at the difference ourselves, but I think it would be really nice actually to do a bit of a historical comparison. Potentially, there's probably archives somewhere. Again, Carol probably knows more, but there's probably archives where we could compare some of the historical stuff to the contemporary, you know, the contemporary alcohol marketing depictions as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. The whole "you've come a long way, baby" in tobacco marketing, and also the revolving door of people who kind of head up alcohol multinationals, and they've maybe worked in the past for tobacco industry, and then they're going to soft drinks and junk foods, and that's what just happens. Diageo. So there's clear playbook being brought out for different industries. Yeah.
I think as well, just thinking actually on the global scale as well, in terms of regulation, when there's more regulation in countries like the UK, etc., and across Europe, as happened with tobacco, the industry will move to countries such as Africa, India, where there's no regulation. So I think there's a similar trend in terms of global marketing there, like with tobacco. The more regulation we have in countries like here, and the more they target consumers through those messages of empowerment, including Western empowerment. So there's work by colleagues around alcohol messaging in Africa, where drinking is associated with this very kind of Western perception of what it means to be an empowered woman, which they probably wouldn't be allowed to make those associations here so directly, but in countries such as Africa, where there's that less regulation, they can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amanda. That's been fascinating. I'm sure we could have another half an hour of discussion, but I would just like to flag up our next alcohol occasional is on Tuesday, the 25th July, and we will have Dr. Karen Maxwell and Dr. Gemma Mitchell talking about reshaping Scotland's nighttime economy, public and stakeholder views on the changing role of alcohol post-COVID-19. But for now, thank you so much to our audience for their questions, and huge thank you to Amanda. And I'm sure we're all clapping individually, but together. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.